so I pass that on to you and your listeners. Why are you crying, dude? Right? Why are we looking at the things that we can't control? And why don't we start focusing on the things that we can control? Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that, I've built a life that I've dreamt. And what was interesting is after I had that experience, I had a new dream. And that dream was, I'm going to walk again. Not just walk again, I'm going to run again. I'm going to walk and not be weary. I'm going to run and not faint. I'm going to have a full recovery. And again, it's been 20 plus years. I'm not running. And I'm not walking completely.
But it's not a mountain. But it's not a mountain, right?
But I am getting there. And here's what you mentioned, that you just have to take it step by step, no matter how big a step that is. And I learned that we can focus on what we can do, or we can focus on what we can't do. And so my dream was...
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Show. And we have a very special guest on our show today. Please welcome to the show a former silver medalist, Olympic basketball player, family man, author, and motivational speaker, Jeff Griffin. What's up, Jeff? How are you?
Oh, my goodness. It's so great to be here with you, Maurice. It looks good up at this angle. Looks good on the shoulders of giants, talking about you. And thank you for allowing me to shine a light on what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you being on the show, Jeff. You have a very amazing story. And it all started, unfortunately, with a horrific accident years and years ago. But it led you to tremendous success in your life. You are an extremely positive person and, again, successful person. Tell us your story, Jeff.
Oh, absolutely. My dream was to play football in college, to play on the big stage. As a little kid, that's the song that sang to my soul. And I remember getting the courage to ask somebody or tell somebody what my dream was. And they're like, "Yeah, you can't do that." And they gave me every reason why I couldn't play football in college. And they said, "You can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do that." And this word, "I can't," we hear it 150,000 times by the time we're 17 years old. But and compared to 5,000 times to hearing the word "I can." And that word "I can't," it's poisonous, it's debilitating, it's limiting. And as soon as we tell ourselves that we can't, our mind shuts off every opportunity to come up with a solution. And so fortunately for me as a little kid, I didn't realize that, but all I knew was there was a song that sang to my soul. And that song that sang to my soul was to play football in college. And I told them that dream, and they're like, "You can't do that." But I've learned that other people base our possibilities on their limitations.
Yes.
And so I just continued to chase down that dream. And I was fortunate enough to hear it enough to keep going, to keep after it. And one day after my senior, day of practice, my senior year in high school, I went inside the house, and there was on the table was a letter from the school that I wanted to go to. I grew up in northern Utah. I wanted to play at southern Utah there at BYU in, I guess, central Utah. And there was a letter from the legendary Hall of Fame coach, Lavelle Edwards, inviting me, the short, slow white guy, to come play at his campus. And I tasted the sweetness of success. I got to experience what it would be like to be on the big stage. I got to experience what it would be like not just to be in the stadium, not just to be in the stands, and not just to be on the sidelines with a jersey on your back. I got to experience what it would be like to be out on the field and experience that, to where I can smell it, taste it, hear it, and experience it in person.
Yes.
And that's what I've come to learn about this life. Is if we're just barely breathing and calling it a life, we don't get to experience those magic moments where we get to see, taste, touch, and feel and experience, this game called life. And life is beautiful. Life is beautiful. And that dream was shortly fulfilled, because in between seasons, I went home and was trying to earn some money to go back and focus on the next season. And I started my own business. I was a painter, and I got a phone call from Napoleon Dynamite country there in Preston, Idaho. I went up there, $3,000 later, and 3 days later, I'd have enough money to go back and focus on football and to get my bullet bike that I've always wanted. Maurice, I always ever saw a guy on a bullet bike, and there's always a lady on back, and I'm thinking to myself, the chicks dig the wheels.
Well, Jeff, as I mentioned on the outset, everything started with this horrific accident, which confined you to a wheelchair. And you had this great opportunity, as you accurately stated, about Lavelle Edwards and BYU and being a part of the football experience. And then you have this life-changing event. And a lot of people would just kind of like take the position of defeat and stop living. A lot of people have done that when they've experienced this type of injury. But you chose to do the opposite of that. And again, you are a very encouraging person for me. And I love hearing you talk. You're a very positive person. And I just want you to express to the listeners out there, what is it, Jeff, that motivates you to get up every day, man, and give it everything you've got to be the very best you can be?
Oh, absolutely. What motivates me is that I have an extra day to breathe.
Yes.
I have another day to live. And, when I was lying on my back next to the unpainted barn, I just fallen 40 feet and broke my back. And my dreams, my identity that was all wrapped up in my physicality, being able to jump, being able to run, being able to catch, was all taken away from me. And I entered that sauna of self-pity. And I remember going, they didn't feed me in the hospital anymore in my bed. I had to get out and go to the cafeteria. And so I went to the cafeteria. I wanted to be left alone. I wanted to be as far away as I could from any person, because the pain was so excruciating.
Yeah.
All pain hurts no matter the size. And I remember just having this biggest pity party. I'm flavoring my food with my tears, and I plot my tray down on the table, and all of a sudden this tray just goes right in front of me. And I look up, and I'm about to tell the person who put his tray there to go take a hike. I want to be left alone. And before I could say anything, the individual across from me asked me a question that changed my life forever, that helped me exit that sauna of self-pity, that helped me see things different, that helped me flip the switch and reframe things and give myself a reason to live, to give my heart a reason to beat.
Yes.
And the question that he asked me, and by the way, the person across from me was a prisoner from the Point of the Mountain that was doing rehab at the hospital. And this question that he asked me set me free from my prison.
Okay.
And the question he asked me was, "Why are you crying, dude?" And I'm like, "What?" In his slurred speech, he had an aneurysm lifting weights, and that's what he's at the hospital for, was to recover. In his slurred speech, I recognized the question that he was asking me, and the question he was asking me was, "Why are you crying, dude?"
Yeah.
And instantly, I flipped a switch and started to see things different. And I noticed there was a guy who was paralyzed from the neck down, and he had a halo screwed to his skull, and he couldn't even move. He couldn't even feed himself. And the guy next to him was paralyzed from the neck down, but he had some movement. They taped a fork to his hand, and he was trying to feed himself, and the morsels were falling off his fork, and he was barely getting anything to bite, to eat. And I'm like, why am I crying? I can move. I can move my arms. I can hug. I can feed myself. I can, transfer myself out of my bed, even though it takes me 30 minutes to do so. I'm like, I can do these things. And so at that moment, I realized that I can focus on what I can't do, or I can focus on what I can do. And that's what, excuse me, that's what just gets me excited every day when I wake up, is that, what? I have breath. I have life. I have an opportunity to experience one more day on this beautiful planet that we've been given.
Man, that is a great story, Jeff. And I think that the lesson to be learned from that is that there's always someone that's having a harder time than you are. And you have to be thankful for what you have, because it could be worse. As bad as things can be in life, it could be worse. And we just don't realize how many difficult situations that exist out there. And you said something that I love, and that is be confident about the things that you can do, and don't worry about the things you can't change. You know, that is a moot point. There's nothing you can do about the things you can't change, but there's a lot you can do with the things you can change. And that is a very freeing and liberating, or not liberating, but a liberating statement. It's like you can do so much, and you've done a heck of a lot, Jeff. As a matter of fact, I can name off some of the things. 2004 Paralympic Games in Athens, Greece. A silver medalist for the USA men's wheelchair basketball team, a national champion who played for the Utah Wheelin Jazz, and a 4-time All-Star MVP at that. #1 men's wheelchair tennis player in the state of Utah, won the St. George Marathon, and you have 2 Guinness Book of World Records. I would say you focused on the things that you can do, Jeff.
Yeah.
I would definitely say, tell us about the world records in the Guinness Book of World Records there.
Oh, absolutely. I would love to. And I would just like to add to that list. When I was hurt, I was given a 0% chance of ever walking or standing with my legs. The experts gave me a 0% chance of having kids. Like, it's the first function to go, it's the last to come back. Some of the experts gave me a 0% chance of getting married, not because of my wheelchair, but just because of who I am. And my wife and I are going to celebrate 26 years in July, and we have 4 beautiful biological kids. And that, I would say, is the greatest accomplishment of my life so far. Is that family we have reared and raised, and that beautiful woman that said yes to me.
Yes.
But in regards to those Guinness World Records, I love the quote from Sir Winston Churchill that says, "To every man, there comes that special moment when he is figuratively tapped on the shoulder and offered a special thing unique to him and fitted to his talents. What a tragedy if that moment finds him unprepared or unqualified for the work, which would be his finest hour." And, I always say that when the moment to perform has arrived, the moment for preparation has passed. And so when I was a little kid, I opened up that book. I saw the Guinness World, Book of World Records. I'm like, how cool would that be to be in that book? But I didn't want to grow my fingernails out or collect belly button lint or whatever those crazy things are that people do to get inside that book.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in 2008, I was going to one of the All-Star events. We were kicking off on Thursday when, before the big boys came in, even though I think the big boys, started and kicked it off. In 2008, we're in New Orleans. Guinness World Records was there. We want to do an event at halftime. We want to, see how many free throws can be made in a minute from a wheelchair. We're going to choose 3 from the East and 3 from the West. And me and my teammate were there at the time when they showed up, and they're like, "We want you 2 to represent 2 of the 3 from the West." And they're like, "Are you interested in doing that?" And so we both looked to each other and we're like, "Yeah, we are." And and then when he left, we both turned to each other and at the same time was like, "I'm going to win this." And it was kind of fun. And so my teammate and I were like, "Okay, we have this." Now, I wasn't planning or preparing for this Guinness World Record opportunity, but I was tapped on the shoulder. And I'm not saying that's my finest hour, but it was an opportunity where I was tapped. It was something that I wanted to do as a little kid. I had shelved that idea. I shelved that dream. And here it is. I'm ready. And so after 20 minutes of, the first half that I got to play, my teammate only played 5 minutes of the first half. We show up at the free throw line. 2 of my teammates on the East were 2 of the top 4 free throw shooters in the world. I'm the 5th best, but I had 2 teammates that was number 2 and number 4. And those guys were competing for the, 3 of the spots in the East. And he went first, my teammate did, who's the number 2 free throw shooter in the world. And he gets up there. They've got the cheerleaders. They've got the mascots. They've got the representatives from Guinness. They've got the lights. They've got the, fans in the stands. And then they've got the stopwatch. And they say, "Go." And he starts shooting. He's like, clank, 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 splash, splash, clank, clank, clank. 60 seconds went by. The official count, 6. And I turned to my teammate and I'm like, either he sucks or this is difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we know he doesn't suck because he's the second best player in the world, free throw shooter in the world. My next teammate from the world, the USA men's team, the fourth best shooter, gets up there and he gets 9. He gets 3 better. And then another person goes, and they don't even come close to that. So it's my turn. I get to go up there and I'm like, okay, here's my opportunity. And I talk about establishing holy habits and righteous routines. Like, what are you going to do? What are you going to establish in your life that is a holy habit and righteous routine that nothing's going to get in your way?
Yeah.
And so for me, I had a routine and a habit with free throws. And so I got up there and I did my routine and I grabbed the ball. It was the same cheerleaders, the same representatives, the same mascots, the same lights, the same crowd. But I had a routine. And I went through that routine and I said, go. And I started shooting. And I started hitting splash, 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 splash. And after about, after I got past 10, I'm like, this is easy. Clank, 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 clank. I'm like, oh, good. I'm sorry. I apologize. And then at the end of the 60 seconds, this stopped. I started rolling over to my bench and they yelled out 26.
Oh my goodness.
The official count was 25. And my other teammate, who we both, turned to each other and said, we're going to win this record. He hadn't gone yet. He wanted to go last. And so with the good sportsmanship that I had as we were rolling by, I'm like, hey, trooper, your shoes are untied, even though his shoes don't even touch the ground. And he gets up there. And after about 13, I'm like, oh, okay, he's got this. He's got this. And after this minute was done, we're waiting for the official count. And he comes over to me. I give him a high five. I'm like, hey, nice job. Way to get this. We hear over the intercom, 25. And so he and I both got 25. And so we turned to each other and we're like, hey, shoot off. And Guinness is like, no, you both get it. And so they took a picture of both of us, but I cut him out. And it's just me and the Guinness guy. And so that's my record. And no one's beaten it yet.
Man, oh man, that is one heck of a story. I love it. And as a stand-up comedian by trade, sometimes you get overconfident and you go, oh yeah, I got that Netflix specials coming, and then you go out and then you bomb. That's what happens to me every time I get overconfident. I bomb. But I said that to piggyback on what you said. It's like you could have actually nailed about 50 at that moment when you were like, wow, this is so easy. And then you kind of got back on your horse and said, let me get back to the process. It's all about, focusing on the process. What's the methodology? Because once we abandon that, then we kind of get ourselves out there in no man's land. So I love that story, Jeff. It's a great story. Now you're a motivational speaker. Tell us what led you to become someone that motivates people on stage and encourages and makes people feel like, hey, you can make it in life.
No, absolutely. Great question. And, I like the word motivational speaker. I love the word transformational speaker. And,
yes.
and that's what I love to do. And, I was an educator for 17 years. I got to teach in high school and the college levels. And I got to teach the subject of the Old and New Testament and some other holy writ out there, teaching them life skills using the Bible and other scriptures to help them out. And I love what I did, but I couldn't do what I loved.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is my purpose and my passion. This is my calling to get out there on stage and to really share this message of hope. I'm physically paralyzed. I come rolling out on stage and I dress the elephant in the room about how good looking I am. No, I'm just kidding. But I am in a wheelchair and people can see that. And I've learned over these years that most of us, if not all of us, are paralyzed from the demons of doubt, fear, and complacency.
I was going to ask you a question about Crossroads experience. You actually answered it already right at the top of the show, where a switch clicked on for you. You could have, just put your head down and said, I don't want to live life anymore and had that pity party. But that question came and it changed everything. Your Crossroads experience. And you never look back, so I'm not going to ask you that question because that was your crossroads. To me,
Yeah.
If not, please clarify, but I would take that as a crossroads experience. How now you've written a book called I'm Possible,
Mhm.
Dream, Desire, Do. Tell us about your book and how listeners can get a copy.
Absolutely. The title is intentional. I'm possible, because I've always thought, like, how can we overcome the impossible without really changing our circumstances and our situations? Because we so often want to, change everything, and we think that we were born on the wrong side of the tracks, or the wrong side of color of skin, or we didn't go to the correct college, or didn't get the education that we needed to or wanted to, and I've always been fascinating with those impossible solutions that are out there. And so
Yes.
I'm possible is a story of a young man chasing his dreams, catching it, having it taken away from him, having to, sift through the broken pieces of his back and shattered dreams, and discovering some flecks of gold that helped him, who was me, and helps everyone else who goes out there and applies these tried and true principles
Yes.
that will help them pick up the pieces and get back up and dream new dreams, and go and orchestrate and conduct the song that sings in their soul, and helps them climb their Everest, and helps them chase down their dreams, even if it's at a snail's pace, even if it's not the way we wanted it to happen. But there are things that we can do. And for me, the greatest thing that has helped me change the impossible into the possible is to just add that apostrophe, to add that great,
Yes.
the apostrophe,
I
the
love
great
it.
I am.
That's a great way to title that. I love that. And then, you got a lot of young people out there that, I kind of mentioned this also at the beginning of the show, that have suffered life altering injuries similar to yourself. And what advice, what message can you leave with young people out there, Jeff, that are struggling right now in their mind? How do I do this? How do I navigate my future? What message can you leave with young people that are struggling with similar injuries?
Absolutely. My message to the world is just don't quit. My message is to slow down, to dream again, to increase those desires, and then to take those steps, even if it's an inch at a time, because inch by inch is a cinch, yard by yard is hard. And so often we
Yes.
try to consume our dreams all at once, and we can't do it. I think Confucius said that a man cannot eat the whole elephant in one bite. And I'm like, who eats elephants? And so I'm like, a man cannot eat the cow in one bite. But I'm sure we've consumed 3 or 4 of them if we're carnivores. And so there's a process. And you mentioned that word process. We've got to trust the process, because it's the process that helps us progress.
Yes.
And so often we focus on the promise and we abort the process. And so it's important to know our destination, to know our dream, to know what we want. And then it's important to then chase it down, to take it an inch at a time, a step at a time. And eventually, if we keep on going and we keep on pushing and we keep on living, we're going to turn around and like, holy cow, this was a beautiful life that I lived.
There was a statement that you made. I had watched an interview with you, and you talked about the "is what it is" statement, which I loved your commentary on that, and I think that the African American lingo lends itself to "it is what it is, bro." You know what I'm saying, bro? And it's like it's a thing. It's become a part of our dialect in American culture. It is what it. Tell us a little bit about your experience with that statement, Jeff.
Absolutely. My good friend, well, I won't say his name, but I was invited to come play for the Dallas Wheelchair Mavericks team. We went to Japan, and I love those guys. And a lot of them were African American teammates that used to be, opponents of mine, but now they are teammates, and we were able to bond and have a great, great time. And I remember him jamming in the back of the bus and listening to his music. I'm like, "What you listening to?" He's like, "Hey, Utah," because I'm from Utah. He's like, "Hey, Utah, you won't like this." I'm like, it use language that you don't use," and I'm like, "Oh, come on, man. Who's the artist?" He's like, "I did. I am. I laid the tracks down," and I'm like, "Okay." And then the next day we were in Japan. I come down early in the morning to get some breakfast, and he's jamming out to it again. I look at my wrist, the imaginary watch, and I'm like, so-and-so, isn't it a little bit too early for this angry music? And he turns to me, he's like, Utah, it is what it is. And all of a sudden I was about to leave and just leave it at that. And all of a sudden I had this little divine download hit me, and I stopped and I turned and I looked at him. I'm like, you're right. It is what it is, but it doesn't have to be.
I love it. Great statement. Great statement. And I think that's the what really stood out to me in your commentary on the statement. We all understand the statement. It is what it is, and so forth and so on. However, it lends itself to a downtrodden result. It can't get any better, but no, it can get better. It doesn't have to stay that way. And, there is light at the end of the tunnel. You have to make the decision whether or not it stays that way, because it doesn't have to. I mean, myself personally, I believe in Christ. I know that it is what it is. The reality is we can all be better people. And so when you say that statement, you're accepting things and you're allowing yourself to stay in a rut. And so I'm glad that you made that clarification, because there needs to be there needs to be an add-on to the statement. It is what it is, however. And that's the part that I love. Young people, if you're out there, once again, you're listening to Jeff Griffin, a motivational speaker who has made life great from a wheelchair. Suffered a horrific accident years ago, and he is absolutely living life to the fullest. And you can make it, whatever your situation may be. Follow Jeff Griffin on social media or by website, and watch him speak. Listen to his words. You can make it. You can have success and victory in your life. You don't have to accept things as they are and stop living. Jeff, how can listeners follow you on social media or by website?
Yeah.
Also, Jeff, and also book you as a speaker.
Absolutely. In fact, go to my website at griffinmotivation.com. If you go to the contact page, send me your information. We'll come out and speak and inspire and transform your audience with this life-altering experience. It really is. We move the needle and we give some practical things that you can put into practice and put in place that will give you the results that you want. And that's Griffin, the Griffin. It's like the mythical beast. I always, joke, Maurice, that, I remind my wife that I'm a griffin, I'm a mythical beast, and she reminds me that I'm neither a beast nor mythical. But
okay.
If your listeners go to griffinmotivation.com, there's the handles up there. They can follow me on Instagram, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on any of the things that are out there at YouTube. But absolutely, please reach out to me. In fact, the listeners who are still here, if you go to the contact page and you put in the subject line possible, I will send you the possibility principle that is at the footings of the foundation. These 3 gold nuggets that I go out and teach everybody in the world is the foundation, and the footings is what holds up that foundation, and those footings is the possibility principle. And I will send that to you for free. Companies, pay me thousands of dollars to come and share that with their group, and I'll just gift that to your listeners. If they go to the website, go to the contact page, put in the word possible, we'll send out that possibility principle, and love to see you on the other side.
I love it. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We are speaking with motivational speaker Jeff Griffin on the Maurice Brown Show. And if you're coming in late and you're like, oh man, I missed it, my goodness, it's okay, because you can watch the replay on Facebook or YouTube, and also the Taken Network. We were just picked up a few days ago by that network, and also on Spotify, where all major podcasts are heard. You can hear the entirety of this interview with Jeff Griffin. Jeff, thank you so much for being on the show, man. I consider it an honor to meet you. I'm encouraged by you, and I thank you for your positivity and your encouragement, my friend. May the peace of the Lord be with you and your family, Jeff. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you.